Hello.
Hi there. Looks like we're live now.
I think so. Are we live? All right.
Yes.
Well, welcome. Welcome to the Let's Get Published live stream critique. Today it's Jeni Chappelle and I taking over from our story chat. Yes, I love taking over things. It's my whole jam. We have our own podcast called Story Chat Radio, and we decided instead of working on that, which we should be doing, instead, we're going to do this live stream critique just to hang out with all of you. Hi, Jeni. How are you?
Bex was like, I'm out of here. I can't even handle the two of you. So
no, she had no interest in sticking around. So it's just us. We do not know what we're doing. So we will see how it goes.
Probably listened to our podcast, and that's why she didn't want to be here for this. She was like, the two of them are way too much. I can't handle it.
I mean,
like
we don't
sisters
know
bickering.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing in the podcast either. That's just a whole other mess. So you should definitely tune in.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'll introduce myself if anyone doesn't know me. I am Jeni Chappelle. I'm a freelance editor. I work on this podcast with Carly, Story Chat Radio. We watch movies and then discuss the storytelling elements in them and how you can apply that to your writing. So it's really cool. I'm a RevPit co-founder as well, and one of the editors. And I could keep going on, but I think that sums me up.
I mean, the problem, though, is you basically just summed me up because apparently...
I know. You should have gone first.
I should have gone first. What was I thinking? Oh, man. All right. Well, I'm Carly Hayward, and I'm also a freelance developmental editor, and I also have this podcast with Jeni where I co-host, and we talk about movies and writing and stuff. And also, I'm a RevPit co-founder. And did you say anything else that I missed? I don't think so. I think that was everything. Yeah? Okay. Okay, cool. Cool.
Yep.
Well, welcome. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments and we will try to see them and address them if we understand how to use YouTube, which is a big
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. We're talented. We know. We're smart. Sure.
Oh, no.
All right.
Okay, so you want to get started?
Yes. Shall we start with our first critique of Space Shifter? Does that sound good to you?
Yes, sounds
start
good.
With that one? All right, let me pull that up. All right.
Okay, so since this is on your screen, I will trust you to do the scrolling.
I will.
And I am going to read this story aloud.
Great.
Okay, so this is a space opera, which is science fiction. So let's get started. Space Shifter by Oliver Elwood, Chapter 1, Misha. In 2 years of active combat, I had never seen a dead body. Combat was constant, almost monotonous, and the more I fought, the more invincible I felt. I'd made drops throughout the cluster leaf in support of Amato C objectives. I was high speed, a dedicated asset to the Corpo. But all of that was about to change. There's a difference between knowing a disaster is coming and actually experiencing it. You think you understand the gravity of a situation, but you can't truly appreciate it until you live through it. Unfortunately, I didn't know that yet. Sunlight pierced my visor as the asteroid rotated through space, revealing a distant fiery orb. It attacked me, bouncing off a million reflective surfaces on the combat wreckage scattered across the crater. I tried to shield my eyes, but ended up staring blankly at the smoldering elbow socket where my forearm had once been attached. A few remaining bits dangled uselessly in its place, but not nearly enough to shade the incoming light. Alarms were still shrieking about the immediate danger, but I no longer cared. I mass muted them and let my suit get on with repairing itself. The last few minutes of intense combat strobed by at a snail's pace. Brief flickering images filled my mind as I involuntarily recounted slices of the battle. Hours of the long, boring buildup compressed into a few distinct shards. A vicious, violent climax of weapons fire as we crashed together in the shallow basin. I, Misha, standing in the lone surviving drop mech, still functional. Victory. Slowly, the strobing memories meshed into a continuous stream. Distant muffled sounds began to clear, and my heart stopped trying to jackhammer the back of my rib cage. A post-combat return to normal. I took a deep breath as my roiling emotional state finally calmed to a slow simmer. It was time for an assessment. The drop mech was still in one piece, but not combat functional. It was barely even just functional. The absorbent paint, formerly shaded in matte gray and black, was now a laser-scorched disaster. The exoskeleton was covered in stress fractures from the extreme impact load conditions caused by high-velocity rounds, including a particularly nasty laceration across the torso. The fiber-reinforced polymer composite armor held together, if only by the slimmest of margins. The various weapons mounted to hard points on the outer frame were all empty or burned out, and my active countermeasures were depleted. The whole suit seemed dangerously close to explosive decompression. At least the internal overlay interface was fully functional, and the batteries were still green. The destruction surrounding me seemed conclusive, but just to be sure, I pulled up the ratings board and confirmed it. First place. That was my ranking for this match. I compared my combat performance against the others, falling deep into the details of the virtual encounter. It was all there in the numbers. Peak performance integrations in the 95th percentile, combined with a steady top-line rating. I guess that's why my drop mech was the only one still standing. The crater rang with a sudden scream of joy that no one else could hear. No one except the thousands of people watching me live on stream. Chat, chat, chat. Do you know what this means? We did it. We just made it into the biggest tournament in the cluster leaf against the best drop mech operators from all 4 solar systems. Okay, probably no Liza loans. I'm thinking like Liza Minnelli from Fort Cluster, right?
Yeah.
But there will be plenty of humans from one cluster. That quip generated the stream of in-chat laughter I was expecting. My imprints were right, and everyone was having a good time, so it seemed right to take the stream out on a high note. Thanks for all your support. I'm going to call it here, but this has been an amazing session. For my regular crew, I love you all. You are the best. For anyone new, thanks for shifting in. Make sure to like and follow. Misha out. I cut the stream feed and savored the moment. It had taken months of effort to qualify for the tournament. It was going to be the defining moment of my young career. A distant tone grew louder and more until I couldn't ignore it. A million miles away, the real-life alarm let me know it was time for university. I imagined slapping the snooze, and it was immediately silenced. Still, the alarm had done its job, and my immersion was blown. I took one last satisfied look around the crater to admire my handiwork. Then I imagined the command to eject from the drop mech, writing a reverse funnel out of the drone and back into my physical body sitting in the couch. The suctioning sound receded, and I risked opening my eyes. I lived in a single-occupant Corpo Standard apartment, or STAN for short. They were all basically the same. Even the differences in furniture choice was minimum. For anyone using only their physical presentation layer, it would have been a lifeless gray affair. But who would only use their eyes to see? Instead, the overlay that everyone had implanted allowed them to project whatever images they wanted. The same overlay that allowed me to immerse myself in the drop mech could make any boring surface come alive with augmented designs. If I was lazy, I could let the defaults come through. If not, I could project my own style. And if I didn't like what someone else was displaying, I could simply overwrite it with my own preferences, and we each saw our own unique take on the world. The alarm went off again, and this time I heard it through my actual ears. Only 5 minutes left until classes started. I resigned myself to a day of school, but all I could think about was getting back to my drop mech. It would be done repairing by the end of classes, and I'd have plenty of time to prepare for the tournament. Suffering was probably too strong a word. It wasn't really that bad. All you had to do was plug into the educational transfer net and sponge the daily mandated 4 hours of education. Information flowed, and afterwards you were hungry and ate a sandwich. It was kind of relaxing, sometimes even interesting depending on the subject, but most of it seemed unnecessary relative to the life I planned to live. The rigidity of the schedule meant that it frequently overlapped with events I actually wanted to participate in. That's why it had taken me until the last minute to qualify for the tournament. At least there were only a few weeks left, and then I would be graduated. I envisioned a scene change in my overall school mode. Frenetic light patterns suddenly shifted into smoothing waves that rolled over the walls before lazily crashing against the shore of my kitchen. I grabbed a quick drink, switched my clothing status to more formal tones, and took a quick stretch before sinking back into the couch. I closed my eyes, pinged my overlay to open an external connection, and walked through the doors into higher education. I was immediately interrupted by 2 hours of advertising. As a non-aligned student, I could choose goods and services from any of the four major corpos as long as I watched their commercials. I bought imprints with a currency, and corpos were in constant competition for your views. These ads covered my weekly cost of living, but I had put them off, and now it was due by the end of day. After graduation, there would be pressure to select a favorite corpo for brand loyalty, but most students didn't wait. They just picked one early on and stuck with it for the convenience and reduced imprint requirements. Not me. That's why I lived in a Domo Majora and wore only Amato C merch, ate baratata food,
That sounds right.
and sat my happy ass in a top of the line Soda Soto couch. It meant a heavier ad load, but it was worth it, except for right now when I didn't have enough time left. I seethed as the ads began to autoplay. I came back to reality 6 hours later, freshly injected with advertising and education. I was ready to eat a sandwich, but now there wasn't enough time to get to social studies and back home before the tournament began. I panicked. There had to be a way to regain the lost time, but what could I do? And chirped my professor's overlay. I shaded my persona deeper into the blue spectrum to highlight how under the weather I was feeling. To my dismay, she answered immediately and pulled me directly into her instance. Professor Mansa sat at an antique desk piled high with ancient books and navigation equipment. Instructor Mansa, I managed to get through the educational portion of school, but now I am starting to feel ill. Would you be willing to excuse my absence from the second half social studies? I don't think I'm well enough to leave my stand. Misha, surely you realize I have full access to your biometrics and health scans. There is no physical excuse for you to not continue today's schedule. Please travel to social studies and complete your coursework as expected, and turn off that ridiculous blue filter. You're not fooling anyone. But it seems so pointless to walk halfway across the city just to be socially non-distanced. Why do I have to physically interact with people instead of online? It's a huge waste of time. Misha, do you imagine this to be an original thought? The entire purpose is to expose you to the discomfort inherent in real-world social situations, to reduce your anxiety and make you a well-rounded human. It's for your benefit. Of course you can't miss it. Being there physically is the entire point. I came to a sudden, painful understanding. After so much hard work to qualify, I was going to miss the tournament. It sent me into a spin and caused an involuntary panic response. Of all the things you could have chosen to do in this life, including nothing at all, you volunteered to teach. Do you regret that? I think I would. Professor Mansa didn't reply immediately. Instead, she let a long pause linger and gave my instant regret plenty of room to develop into full-blown dread. I knew immediately that all my efforts would be for nothing. I was going to miss the tournament, and it was entirely my own fault.
Very good. So first of all, I'd like to compliment you on your reading skills. I was very impressed.
Oh, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I've been practicing for a while.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how much better you did when it comes to my turn, because this is very good. So my first impressions were, this is a very interesting story that feels very real right now, which I very much enjoy.
Yes.
And I really liked in the beginning here, I'm scrolling up, how it feels like it's a typical sci-fi. We're on a planet and we're kind of in a battle scene, and you slowly start to get little hints that, oh, it's not actually real, which I really enjoyed.
I did too. And a lot of times I struggle with those kinds of openings because they feel like false starts.
Yeah.
But I think that the transition on this one is really smooth, actually. It works out really well. So it didn't feel like a false start or like we needed to start again once we got to like the real world.
Yeah, it didn't feel quite like a bait and switch, even though it kind of is one, but it's one that works, I guess.
Right.
Because I think part of it is because it feels so real to him. It's not like he wakes from a dream and suddenly this is all different. This is his life to this character.
We can also see how the action in that first part is eventually related to the main action of the scene as well, the rest of the scene. And it really helps to set up the character and sort of what's important to them. And as chapter 1, it feels like it's setting up some of the bigger conflict for the rest of the story as well.
Yeah, I agree. I really loved how that was done. I think what I would suggest, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, I think this shouldn't be in first person. I don't know how you feel.
Well,
to me, first person can
right
be...
now it doesn't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. To me, first person can feel a little telly. And it's not that this one has to be in third person, but I think it might work better for the author because it can get third person it's easier to be a little more showy and less telly. What do you think?
Yes, and also so using the name of the character at the beginning of the chapter, where it's a chapter 1 Misha, it's multiple point of view as well.
Yep.
So it's possible. Personally, I'm not a fan of multiple point of view in first person. I like a nice, deep third person.
Yeah.
I think it can be as well.
Well, the problem is,
and also this doesn't really read like first person to me. I feel like we're not getting a deep enough point of view for this to really feel like first person.
Right. The problem with multi POV first person is that every different character has to feel so distinct, and you have to be able to tell immediately that you are in a different character's head, and that's very, very difficult with first person. You kind of lose some of your flexibility. And I didn't like... I thought when you were talking about the name, I didn't love right here where the character calls themselves by their own name. I don't know if you caught that.
Yes, I think... Yes. Well, before we get to that, I wanted to back up a little bit to the first paragraph. I struggle with the first paragraph because it has some very obvious foreshadowing in it.
Yes.
And I see this. I see this a lot, but I've seen it quite a bit, where like very much that like, unfortunately, I didn't know that yet. So that like kind of from but all of that was about to change down to the end of the paragraph. That whole part there, instead of creating a sense of like, ooh, what's going to happen, I feel like it actually takes some of the tension away.
That's literally what I wrote.
Is it?
Yeah, I literally, you're not going to be able to read my handwriting, but I said, loses tension for me when you put this.
Yeah.
When you write about to change, I lose all tension.
So instead of having that really, that overt kind of foreshadowing, instead, I want you to look up the idea of microtension.
Yes.
And that is basically thinking about your word choice, picking words that are going to create the sense of tension that you want your reader to feel at this beginning portion. So instead of telling us like, ooh, something big is going to happen, then instead you just want to use your word choice to create that sense in the reader that something big is going to happen, that you're building up to something big. So I think that that's something, like I said, it's something I've seen in some other stories. So I wanted to point that out here as well.
Well, I think that kind of relates to what I was kind of saying about the first person perspective, especially when it is like past tense, because it's so easy to fall into that trap of here is the character telling their story and they are aware of what is going to happen later.
Right.
And it's easy to fall into that when you're in that tense, and it usually doesn't work the way you want it to. It just doesn't feel authentic, and it feels very like I'm sitting down with this person and they're relaying a story to me instead of I'm with them on this journey. And you kind of want to be with your characters and not have your characters tell you a story, if that makes sense.
Well, and first person should be very intimate. When you are reading first person, you should be experiencing the story as the character experienced it. So I do feel like these pages, and this is why it doesn't really feel like first person to me, these pages almost tell this story from an omniscient sort of point of view.
It does.
But it says first person. But it is telly. And not only is the balance of show and tell off, but also we don't really get a very strong sense of who this character is. By the end of the scene, we know that this tournament is important to him, but we really don't get any other sense of sort of who he is, what, his goals are, what his obstacles are. Those kinds of things. I felt like, so to go back to, we talked about the first paragraph, the couple of paragraphs there before to realize that this is like an online streaming competition kind of thing.
I was skipping down to the end where we learned about the character. Sorry. Going back up.
That's okay. So to me, it felt a little, it was a little confusing because I wasn't sure. We're coming in the aftermath of what has happened. So it's not clear sort of where we are, what we're seeing. And then, yes, the I, Misha, stood out to me too, because I was like, as opposed to what?
Right.
And
I
think
like they were trying to get
set
their,
up this sense of,
yeah.
Go ahead.
It just felt like they were trying to get the name in there. Is how
I
read it.
Well, I thought it felt like I thought it felt like a little bit of a clue that, this is like virtual person versus real life person. But it feels very stilted. And definitely takes us out of that sort of first person. And so in there, I made a note that we needed to see that deeper point of view, stronger interiority, because it doesn't feel like first person. And so interiority is thoughts, feelings, and kind of the visceral responses that you feel inside your body. So we need to see all of those. And then my other note here was we need to see the why behind the what. So I feel like your narrator here, Misha, has really been almost relegated to just narrator and not protagonist, main character. So like they're telling us what happened, but we don't get any of that sense of experiencing it. We don't understand. We're seeing what happened, but we don't understand why it matters. We don't understand why it's important. And so we can't really connect with it or with the character.
That is a great way to put it. I love that. It felt very much like this character is teaching us about this world in a kind of, when just from in my experience, when I like talk about video games and I'm like, okay, so here's how the video game works and here's what you do. And it felt very explainy, to trying to explain this world that is really interesting. Like, I want to read about this world, but I want to learn as we go along with the character instead of them just kind of being like, so this is what this is, and now I have to go to this thing, and I hate it because of X. I wanted more of like forward momentum through the deeper point of view that Jeni has mentioned a few times. I think
I think that's always a challenge with hard science fiction, is what I was going to say. It's always a challenge with hard science fiction.
It is.
Because you do have that focus on, you have that focus on technology, science, all of the part that makes it hard science fiction as opposed to soft science fiction. And your readers do want to see that stuff, but especially in the beginning, it can be really, really hard to get that balance where they're connecting with the characters. You've got the forward movement in the story, and you want to get that world building in there. So I do think that the balance of that is off as well.
Yeah, it's all great world building. We're just learning too much of it at once. Like, maybe take out the bit about the ads and save that for later. Just focus on gaming versus school, or just kind of narrow the focus of what we're going through here.
Right. And also consider that you can touch on some of these things, but not fully explain them yet.
Yep.
Exactly. And you can give us the explanations once we get into the story a little more.
And I don't think I needed to get quite into as much detail on the armor as we did. Just because at this point, I'm starting to figure out that we're in a game and we're not just in military, but I want to see more about what the game is and less about how his armor is reacting to it. Because I think basically these two full paragraphs are about the armor.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like the first place we really started to get any idea of main character, who they are, is in the paragraph where it starts, the alarm went off again, and this time I heard it through my actual ears. That paragraph and the one after that give us some very, very slight voice, like information flowed and afterwards you were hungry and ate a sandwich. I like that little bit of voice that really tells us something about this character, who this person is. But it's not strong enough. It's not consistent enough throughout the pages. So we don't really get like a strong picture of that. But I wanted to point that out because I want to see more of that in these pages. I want you to build that part up.
I love that.
So we get more of who the main character is just by the way they put words together, the way they explain things.
I can't find it. You said it started with the alarm going off?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like we learn. Yeah, I was looking up higher because I was thinking we learn.
Yeah.
As soon as they start chanting chat, I kind of assumed.
Yeah.
This is where.
Right.
Yeah. Except for the thousands of people watching me live on stream.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, oh. But yes, I agree. I love.
Right. That's definitely, and you have those couple of little points before that kind of give us hints, but I think that's definitely where you go, oh, cool.
Yeah. This was a great, well-written section. I liked this part too. Agreed. I thought it's a really cool story. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Ready Player One, but mixed in with more of like the modern, more of the modern day way people are gaming and people are living, especially staying home and things like that. I think it's a really cool story. We just need to learn more about Misha. And basically it's all about getting close to Misha in your first pages. You want to really get close to your main character. If you don't want to change it to third person, which you really do not have to, Just make sure you're
Mhm.
really pushing that first person perspective and getting very intimate with Misha. Either way, I think it could be really cool.
Yeah, I think so too. It definitely shows a lot of promise. And I know this isn't like highly polished yet at this point.
Yes.
So I hope we've given you a lot of really good tips on, where you can take it when you revise more with it.
Yeah, I think it's great. All right, are we ready to move on to our next one?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be reading this next one, and it will not go as well as Jenny did. For this first piece, though, I just want you to know that it is not the first chapter. As you can see now, it's chapter 10. A little bit about the scene before. The main character has been proposed to and is taken aback in shock. And also her main love interest shows up at that moment as well. So it's a big dramatic moment for this main character named Sana. All right, so this is Sana Suitors by Noreen. Chapter 10, The Proposal and the Aftermath. Adam's eyes, shining in tandem with the glittering diamonds, tell a different story. His father holds a camera recording this whole exchange live. I dig my nails in my palms deep. This is not a fevered dream. This is him on a knee. The thought loops through my mind. This is all pretend, Sana. He's not really proposing. This is all part of his plan to let my family know that he is serious about me. So, what do you say? The princess cut diamond gleams in the overhead light. I flinch and hope that they are fair trade. This is all pretend, Sana. Sana? My sister mumbles. Her face is a blend of exasperation and he's the best you can ever do look I received after Rishta refusals. I'm going to pause here and note that I will do my best pronouncing some of these words, and I'm very sorry if I butcher any of them. Anyway, a line of sweat trickles down my back. I close my eyes to think. Blink, Daniel. What the actual hell? Blink. He's still there. His unfiltered gaze scans me, Adam, and the ring. The adrenaline pumping through my veins is so much that I cannot even discern my raging heartbeats. Let's revisit it in 100 years is what I want to say. Okay, are the words that hang in the air before the oohs and ahs and a faint clap fill the room. Adam rises up and slips the weighty diamond on my right ring finger. For a few seconds, all I hear and see is clicks and swipes of cameras and cameras on phone. Then his dad turns off the video camera and claps the back of Adam's shoulder and nods congratulations to us. My sister and brother-in-law have their camera on selfie mode when they approach us. She pauses, checks her teeth, and smooths her hijab, then fixes mine and finally tells her husband not to smile. And this is when a news flash appears in my head. She was prepping me for these pictures. She was in on the proposal, maybe even hinted at him in not so subtle ways to have a ring on the ready the second she met him. Ugh, I let her play me. Again. She whispers to Adam before she leaves. Don't worry, I'll tag your mother in all the pictures. Adam's smile has only deepened through all of this. I scan the crowd for Daniel. He's not here. Was he here before, or was it a figment of my imagination? Did you know about this? I ask Amy. When Saif and her step up to congratulate, she smiles and gives me a hug. Of course, she knew. This is, after all, her house. Before I can hear her response, I hear my mother's voice from another corner of the great room. Shahida, what is my Mafi going to do? I don't forgive you. An older woman in a white sari and hijab speaks to Ami in a soft tone. Baji, please. Will my forgiveness bring my husband back? Your husband made sure we had nothing to our name. Where was this feeling of sisterhood then? Ami flits her quivering hand to swipe a tear. Zia stands there stunned, holding Ami's arm. I squeeze his hand and tell him to go outside while I call Ami. Ami, there's no point in rehashing all this. I don't want you to get so worked up. It's not good for your diabetes. I rub her shoulder to let her anger simmer down. I can see the muscles of her jaw push against her skin. Ask her to leave. Daniel's voice booms. Ami, you've said what you had to. Let's leave now. I can't stand here and let you be insulted. A younger version of Sipte uncle and Daniel moved to Shahida's side. Now I know I didn't dream of him earlier. He's calling her Ami even before my sister asks him, "Who are you, Tum Kaun Ho?" Sorry. "You know nothing about this," he replies, now holding his mother's arm. "I know very well, because it started with me, Rana." My sister's eyes widen and her grip on Ami's hand slacks. Shahryar. Shahryar is Daniel. The room is so quiet for a minute that I can hear the gasp from Ami and Shiraz collectively. The man helps Shahida towards the exit. On the way, she hugs Amy's mother, Razia, and they both hug and wipe tears. My sister huffs and says, "Hopefully this is the last we see of them." My hand that twists the ring halts. This is probably not the best time to tell them that he is my boss. Break. Daniel. Here's the thing about grudges. They only grow bitter like coffee the more they percolate and simmer. Time isn't the best healer for grudges. We should have known this. Love and hate are flip sides to the same emotion. Stronger than love, fiercer than hate. Fiercer the hate. Ami knew that stepping inside the house before Sophia, yet she had hoped for a sentiment lesser than it. I loathe that my suspicions were in fact not unfounded. No one is a saint, and this is precisely why forgiveness is harder to give than take. Ami's body quivers. Salim and I hold her hands as she sheds silent tears. Not a word gets spoken among the three of us. Maybe it is because as men we don't quite know somehow how to react to tears. They don't come easy to me, so I never know how to tell her what to do. Because I imagine sometimes after a good cry you do feel better, like a big scream on a roller coaster, a monsoon shower after a hot July sun. Her hand slipped away from mine when Salim and I help her in the car. I should have done more. She shakes her head and looks to me to validate her guilt. Say to those who believe that they should forgive those who expect not. I quote the Quran to her. You should not worry about it, Ami. It's been a while. If Sophia, Auntie, cannot see that, then you have to let it go. I don't know if it's the Quran or that she's had a good cry. She stays quiet. Let me check her vitals, Salim helps her inside my Tesla and grabs his backpack from the trunk. Good thing we have a doctor in the family. He unloops the stethoscope and checks her vitals. After a few minutes, he tells her, Ami, please relax. He gives her a medication and settles her in the back seat. Is she okay? I ask him when she closes her eyes and rests her head on the seat. I gave her something to calm her nerves. I don't want this to affect her blood pressure. He slips into the front seat and clicks the seatbelt. The only sound in the car for a few minutes is the directions back to the house. Salim lets out a long pent-up breath before he says, Sana, engaged. Wait, wasn't it Ani's engagement party? Was it two for the price of one? Poor girl, she was quite shocked. It took her a minute to answer his question. It must be a relief for you, now that she's off the market. Her focus will be elsewhere and not directed toward hating you like her mother. Relief would be correct, except the way she looked at me before taking his ring didn't help. She looked like she wanted to hightail out of there, despite her ponytailed Romeo's grand gesture. Tattoos and ponytail, that's certainly not Sophia Auntie's choice, must have taken some convincing. Yet, he gives me the don't make the situation worse look. Dude, stay out of his lane. Plus, you both work together. Indeed we do, and I don't know how to fix this mess, other than mind my own business and keep my distance. Except that's not possible, especially if we're working on the case together. I can be professional and keep my shit together. He laughs so hard that I have to peek behind me to make sure Ami didn't wake up. She is still asleep. His shoulders shake when he mutters, You're curmudgeonly caduce, because the title 40-year-old virgin describes you to a T. I'm 33, douchebag. The wrinkle between my brow deepens as I give him a death stare. He snickers. It won't be long. I saw plenty of ladies in that party that gave you the look. If only you would reciprocate, you'd end up. Like you, damn it, even as those words leave my mouth, I know I've made a mistake. He doesn't deserve that snide comment, especially with the shitty evening we've just had. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Just because I had a bad marriage doesn't mean anything. Maybe there is someone out there for you. The end.
It was a very good job, Carly.
Thank
Not
you.
quite as good as mine, but
Well,
it was
no,
good.
I expected that. I understand that you think you're better, and that's fine. It's fine. Anyway. This one's very good. It's a little difficult because we're at chapter 10 instead of chapter 1, like with the other one. So we're missing a lot of context that you would get, or it would be easier to build off of with the first few pages, but it's definitely well written, and I really like the beginning. I like when we're in Sana's perspective. For me, it got a little formal when we switched to Daniel's perspective. What did you think?
Yeah, I felt like Daniel's perspective kind of felt inconsistent. So like there are some parts of it that feel very formal, and then other parts that don't.
I agree.
And this is when I say that, I really just mean the narrative, because I think it makes sense that, you know, he's going to speak differently to you know, different people that he knows. So I think, you know, he's going to speak differently to his friend, or kind of whoever. I'm not sure who Salim is to him. You know, that they speak differently to each other than he speaks to Ami. So I think that makes sense. But in the narrative itself, the voice seems to kind of go back and forth between very conversational and very formal. And so it made it a little tricky, I think, to really get inside his head. Hopefully by the point you're at in this novel, chapter 10, you've already established that. But yeah, it's important to make sure you've got that consistent narrative voice throughout for a character.
I agree. I felt like we got to really know him at the end here. I liked his bickering back and forth with Samil. I liked this section a lot. She looked like she wanted to hightail it out of there despite her ponytailed Romeo's grand gesture. That felt very voicey to me. And very much of who Daniel is. But some of these other moments, like talking about her crying and how he doesn't understand tears, felt very formal, a little old school formal, like how I would expect him to talk to the aunties, which are a big force in their lives. Having these women around who have all these expectations, it makes sense that he would be way more formal with them, as Jenny was saying. But when we're kind of in his head, it doesn't feel authentic. It feels a little stilted for him, especially because we see these like really interesting, less formal moments. So it's not just who he is; he kind of is oscillating a little bit.
Right. And so that narrative voice needs to be like, who is he as he identifies himself? You know, like, what does his inner voice sound like? Because, you know, he does have to have these two different ways of speaking. I think it's interesting because I think we all do, to some extent, at least.
Oh,
you know, that we are much less formal with friends than we are in business situations, or, you know, with older family members, or, you know, those kinds of things. So it's fine for his dialogue to sound different with his friends than it does with the aunties and with Ami.
I agree.
I think that part of it is fine, but the narrative voice needs to sound like whichever one of those he really identifies himself with, or if it's a combination of the two. But it can't be inconsistent. It can't go back and forth like that. So I think that's just something you need to watch for.
Yeah, and people can affect you in different ways. They can make you feel more formal in an emotional way. You can get kind of tight-lipped and shut up, or not shut up, buttoned up. That's the word. So that can be reflected internally, right, but it doesn't necessarily change his narrative voice. It doesn't necessarily change the way he's thinking. He just would maybe mentally shut down a little bit. And that's slightly different than what's happening here. He just gets very formal. It feels like we don't know him consistently well enough. His like consistency is missing, I guess, is basically what we're trying to say.
Yeah. I actually felt like there was a little bit of that issue in Sana's POV as well.
There was definitely not as much to me.
Yeah. I highlighted, I think, in the fourth paragraph down, the adrenaline pumping through my veins is so much that I cannot even discern my raging heartbeats. I feel like the end of that sentence gets into some purple prose a little bit. It's a little too formal as well. And like cannot and discern are pretty formal language. And then raging heartbeats is kind of where it gets a little purple. So yeah, I think, just throughout this scene, in both of the point of views, you need to make sure that you are just keeping that narrative voice really consistent with how the character sees themselves.
Right. And how they're feeling too, because up until this purple prose, she's unable to kind of understand what is happening right now. She's having kind of like a disassociative episode in a way. So I think to then get into such flowery prose can make it feel inconsistent, because that's not how she's necessarily feeling right now. She is overwhelmed. Like I kind of said earlier, shut down. She is shocked. And I don't know that she would get so purple here, or flowery. Yeah. Is another way to put it.
Yeah. I also noticed, I think I only noticed one instance of filtering that a ways down, just almost right before the POV switch. There's I can see the muscles of her jaw push against her skin. Is some filtering in there. Could cut out the I can see and just keep the muscles of her jaw push against her skin. We don't need that filtering language in there, and that always kind of weakens your point of view, your narrative. What am I trying to say? Like that deep point of view that you have with first person, which for the most part I feel is really strong in this piece.
I don't know why I can't ever find the things you're referring to. I can't. I just can never do it. You said right before the switch?
Like paragraphs up.
Oh. It doesn't matter. You read it. Anyway.
Go down to where the switch is. Go down to where the switch is. Oh, there it is. It's right there. Don't move. You moved.
Well, you're on a bit of a delay. I found it. We did it. I did it. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. So just watch out for filtering.
Yes. Filtering. This is what we were talking about. Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think
overall, though, I felt like the scene was pretty successful in that, we do get that sense in the beginning that she's like paralyzed by her shock. We get that super awkwardness of like what seems like it's sort of a love triangle, but not really. Like it seems like she's not really into Adam all that much. Like it seems like that could be like an arranged kind of situation almost based on some of the comments made here. So yeah, it's just
her mother doesn't seem to like him either. So
yeah,
it seems like complicated situation happening, which I love. Is basically it's not a criticism.
I love that too.
Yeah,
and it was a little bit of a struggle kind of keeping up with who all of the characters were because we didn't get to see the introductions to them. Right. But I liked getting to see that there were lots of different bits of backstory that are coming forward here, like old feelings about past events and the situation between her and her sister, between Sana and her sister. So I liked seeing all of those things come up. It really, I think, reinforces that feeling of this being this big, strong family that is imposing a lot of their own kind of feelings and desires onto Sana, especially.
Yeah, a lot of fun family dynamics. I do think it was actually, it shows how successful the writer was, because while some bits were hard to follow, considering this is a random chapter that we've pulled out, I felt like I knew Sana and I knew a lot of these characters. I felt like a lot of that detail was there without having had to read the first 9 chapters. I thought it was pretty successful considering it's pulled out randomly. I really liked it.
I agree.
I definitely want to read a lot more about Sana. She seems awkward and fun. I like awkward heroines.
She does.
And I like
relatable
awkward ones, not clumsy ones, because clumsy's too adorable.
Yeah, so what other thoughts did you have about this piece?
About this one, I don't know. I was really into it. It was mainly just a lot of the, like, there was random phrases that felt very stilted and formal and kind of took me out of it. But I couldn't tell sometimes if it's just how they were, how Sana especially was feeling around her family. I did get a little confused actually in this beginning bit where she closes her eyes, sees Daniel when she's like blinking. I think just from a very like nitpicky perspective, I could have maybe used some italics on like Daniel or maybe something. I think I needed some formatting here to understand that she's seeing Daniel, not that Daniel's blinking, which may have just been my bad, but I could have used a little.
Sure. No. I think some paragraphing changes here might make a difference.
That would have helped too. Yeah.
So like I close my eyes to think, blink, Daniel. And then Daniel, like the next paragraph down. Yeah.
Yep.
Something like that might be helpful.
Yeah, something like that. But other than that,
point.
For the most part, it was pretty easy to follow. Did you have anything else?
No, I think that was it for me, except, I wanted to read more of it too. So
yeah, well, I want to read
both of these pieces show a lot of. You want to get to know all these people first?
Yeah, I want to read the beginning.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Anyway, go ahead. What were you saying?
This delay is annoying, isn't it?
It is. It's very annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think both of these pieces show a lot of promise. It seems like the science fiction piece that we read wasn't quite as polished as the women's fiction. I don't know, we don't have all of the background details on how much these have been revised or whatever. But I think they've definitely both had a lot of strength and a lot of promise in them.
I agree.
So yeah, thanks so much for everybody who sent some of those in, and especially you two who were picked.
Yes,
thank you, Bex, for hosting us. It's been a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Feel free to find our podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We have it pretty much everywhere at this point. Story Chat Radio. Or just reach out to Jenny or I if you have any editing questions. We're always around. Thank you, everybody.
Always.
Let's end there. That's perfect. Okay, bye-bye.